And that way I focus better. I don't have a whole lot of apprehensions. I'm not, no impending doom. This is it for the moment. This is where I'm at, right here, and this fight in front of me, that's what I got accomplished.
And Sean, at the age of 38, at this stage, you think Dwight Qawi is a title contender?
Well, I think he is in this cruiserweight division. We talked about before, Al, how this cruiserweight class is a transition division. Many of the cruiserweights go up to the heavyweight and chase the real money. Also, Dwight Muhammad Qawi is a former world champion. He's a name. He's a marketable item. So I think that he's going to be looking at a world championship fight very soon.
And he's talking about a guy in his time frame, Bobby Ches. That's the man he is pointing to. Tonight he'll be facing a 34-year-old fighter by the name of Young Joe Louis, who has chased the Cruiserweight Championship himself. He has had 2 shots at the Cruiserweight title, losing to Ozzy Ocasio, and then several years later another chance, and going 12 rounds before he was stopped by Leroy Murphy. He had 3 other shots in 85 and 86 against top-name opponents, and took his shots and lumps in that one. And like Dwight Qawi, he then left the ring. He was out for 2 years. Since that time, young Joe Louis has come back and won 4 of his last 5, although not against big-name opponents.
And Al, that is really the only similarity that he has with the Brown Bomber is the name. He is a fighter who is hot and cold. He's had a lot of problems in the past, but Dwight Muhammad Qawi has to be very careful at this point in his career. He wants to get back on top. He wants to get back to that world title fight, but he has to fight the right kinds of opponents. The opponents like tonight against a young Joe Louis who is 34 years old and not a real slugger.
All right, this is scheduled for 10 rounds. Let's set up these 2 fighters on the tail of the tape. Dwight Muhammad Qawi, at the age of 38, at 5'7". He is fighting now at 198. He's going for a cruiserweight title eventually. He is 8 pounds over that limit. He says, though, that'll be no problem to get down for a title fight. And young Joe Louis is at 5'10" and 196 pounds. So he goes in against Qawi, giving up a couple of pounds. They will be fighting here in Atlantic City, and the New Jersey rules, 3 knockdown rule is in effect, as is the standing 8 count. You cannot be saved by the bell in any round, and the scoring is on a 10-point must system. We are ready to go for our first fight tonight, so let's go to our dapper ring announcer, Ed Darian.
Live from the Broadway by the Bay Theater, here at Harrah's, Atlantic City, New Jersey, the boxing capital of the world. Frank Gelb Promotions, in association with Harrah's, proudly present this evening's Tuesday night fights, and is approved by the New Jersey State Athletic Control Board, the Honorable Larry Hazard, Senior Commissioner, the Honorable Jerry Gordley, Chairman, the members of the board, Gary Shaw and Richard Harrison, Lawrence Wallace and R. Yogi Hiltner, Deputy Commissioners. The chief physician in attendance at ringside this evening is Dr. Frank B. Doggett, along with his 2 fine colleagues, Dr. Stanley H. Eden and Dr. Dominic F. Coletta, Jr. The timekeeper to bell is Arthur Spell. Counting for the knockdown seconds, alternate referee Robert Palmer. In the ring at this time, the man in charge of the scheduled 10-round cruiserweight bout, referee Double S. Steve Smoger. The judges, Eugene Grant, Frank Brunette, and Rocky Castellani. And now, my good friends, introducing the principals. First, in the red corner, wearing the solid black trunks. He weighed in at an even 196 pounds. Now, this gentleman has 32 wins, 9 losses, 1 draw, with 19 knockouts. All the way from the windy city of Chicago. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome young Joe Louis. And his opponent in the blue corner, wearing the black trunks with the white trim. Now, he weighed in at an even 198 pounds. Professionally, he has 35 wins, 8 losses, 1 draw, with 20 knockouts. A native of Camden, New Jersey, and now residing in Lindenwold, New Jersey. The former light heavyweight and former cruiserweight champion. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, the Camden Buzzsaw, Dwight Muhammad Qawi. Qawi,
Gentlemen, you were given your instructions at the weigh-in. You obey my commands at all times. You listen to all my instructions and you obey the bell. It's most important. Protect yourself at all times. Corners, I note that both the protectors are up pretty high. I'm not going to call these shots here as low blows. So that'll be in my discretion. Good luck, gentlemen. Touch them up. Touch them right.
Final instructions from referee Steve Smoger. Dwight Qawi, who at the age of 38 years old gets another kind of test tonight. He went 10 rounds with James Salerno in his last fight, and that was just 6 weeks ago. So a turnaround against young Joe Louis, who is also known to be able to go the distance. And Louis comes out with a left jab. Yesterday in the pre-fight interviews, Louis bumped into Qawi and says, "Hey, don't you remember me?" And Qawi says, "No," and kept walking. Louis then remarked, "He'll remember me tomorrow," and this is tomorrow. So Joe Louis right on top of Dwight Qawi, trying to ruin the dream of the former two-time world champion. And there they are, head-to-head in the ring to start this fight. Louis at the age of 34. I guess you can't call him young Joe Louis anymore. He was born in Chicago. His real name is Eddie Taylor, but he reminded some people in the Windy City of the Brown Bomber. Must have reminded him of the physical appearance, maybe facially, certainly not as a fighter. He at one time was a cruiserweight contender. He won his first 22 pro fights before losing the cruiserweight title to Ocasio and getting the other shot against Murphy. But right now it is young Joe Louis who looks at Dwight Qawi as his meal ticket to get back into the picture at the age of 34.
And he says that Qawi is only a blown-up light heavyweight. He says he saw the fight with James Salerno that Muhammad Qawi won. He said James did not want to fight that night. Anybody could have beaten him, including me. For young Joe Louis.
Louis is 4 years younger than Qawi, but actually has been fighting as a pro for a longer period of time. Qawi did not turn pro until he was 25 years of age, when he was released from Rahway Prison. And Joe Louis turned pro 1975, 16 years ago. So he has seen it all in the ring, and now trying to dish it back to Dwight Qawi. Qawi, who's gone through a spiritual change in his life the year he took off, 1990. Year of spirituality, he says. He found himself, turned his life around. He's not really possessed by winning the title, but he is now enjoying the ride. He says he's taking one day at a time, peace with himself, and enjoys being in the ring. If the title comes, so be it. Pretty much the same attitude of another guy who's gone that road, George Foreman. First round action, a lot of infighting in the first 3 minutes.
And it may have been George Foreman that showed the light to Dwight Qawi, because he fought Foreman way back in March of '88, got stopped in 7, but after that fight he said, I've got to get back to religion. I got to get my mental game prepared for these fights.
And we now have a word as the final bell goes. Another word about that George Foreman fight. He also, how he said, he had to get back down to the 230 pounds for the Foreman fight.
And you know, at his height, 5'7", that is extremely short for a heavyweight. In this class, it's short in this cruiserweight division.
And taking the punching power of George Foreman, who has hit
Shots a little bit. Turn your right hand up under.
Dwight
up under his
Qawi,
ribs. When you got him in the corner, lay on him. Lay on him in
George
the corner,
Foreman.
okay? Lay on him.
Matthew Saad Muhammad.
I thought you were going to say James Salerno. There is Dwight Muhammad Qawi. Mike Hall in his corner, along with Ron Gallo, giving him instructions. That first round, your corner tells you what's going on. That's when you alter your style. This is the most important round in boxing. Between the first and second round, they tell you what to do. You have to depend on your corner.
out, Joe. Let him out, Joe.
And by the second round, you start laying that battle plan, realizing that you've got 10 rounds to go. This is just the way Dwight Qawi wants to fight, toe-to-toe. He says, I make no bones about it. I get in there and get with the program. And he gets with the program with a left hook.
And Joe Louis comes back.
Well, Joe said, I'm going to beat him in his own game. I'm going to stand in there and stand toe-to-toe with him. So it could be 10 rounds of toe-to-toe fight.
Young Joe Louis, since he was out for a couple of years, came back to wield off 4 straight victories, but his last fight, which was 7 months ago, he was stopped in the 6th round by Ricky Parkey.
He said he got caught by Parkey with a good right hand, but he said, I stood up after he got knocked down. I told the referee, said, I'm okay, I'm young Joe Louis. The referee didn't seem to be impressed with that, though.
He has legally changed his name. I don't know how much that's going to work when he gets to be like 60, 70 years old. Smacking back and forth. Well, Qawi 6 weeks ago had an elusive James Salerno who was on his toes, always moving away. And now he's got a guy in young Joe Louis who is right on top of him. And Sean had just mentioned Qawi would prefer this style.
And you see Qawi going under and over. Look at these shots in the middle, up under the elbows, and then over the tops of the gloves
And
by Qawi.
He is now cracking through young Joe Louis, blood coming from the nose of Louis.
A lot of pushing in there and shoving. This is a difficult fight to be in because you're so physically tired. The arms are tired, you're catching the punches, you're also pushing and pulling. You know, Dwight Qawi is the one giving room here. He's the one taking the steps back.
Qawi is ranked number 16 by the WBC, getting into the rankings. And we're now coming down to the final 10 seconds of the 2nd round. And we will pause for a word from your local cable systems. Budweiser presents USA's Tuesday Night Fights. Harris in Atlantic City, and zooming in from our balcony cam, we head into round number 3 between former 2-time world champion Dwight Qawi in the black with a white trim against young Joe Louis in the all-black trunks. And this has been a head-to-head fight. They have been standing up against one another, pounding away through the first couple of rounds. The big guys are in the ring tonight. Main event, heavyweight. Riddick Bowe, undefeated in his first 24 fights. Moving into title contention, ranked in the top 10 in all classifications. And he goes up against the veteran Philip Brown, who has his golden opportunity tonight.
And you can really see the difference in these cruiserweights of the fighter who is concentrating heavily on where to put the shots. Look at the accuracy of Qawi's punches compared to Louis. Louis is throwing the shots where he can land them. Qawi thinks about where he wants to place them, then he puts them in there in pinpoint accuracy. Young Joe Louis is a boxer fighting without direction, too. He didn't have any idea what he was going to do in this match. He didn't know a lot about Dwight Qawi. He had no fight plan. He has no buddy to help him figure out how to beat these fighters.
Qawi inside, scoring heavily here in the 3rd round. When you talk to Qawi about the future fights and possible championships, the name that comes to his mind first is Bobby Ches, guy he has never met along the way. But you could just see his thinking. He wants to go with a guy who has been around.
He said he met him a couple times, but he's never fought him.
Inside the final minute of the 3rd, Qawi says he is now more of a thinking fighter.
Ooh. Good body shot from Qawi. Look at him under. He's going under and then over with the punches. This comes from experience. Go down underneath the elbows and over the tops of the gloves. And you look who's coming up is Joe Louis.
This is just a process of wearing his opponent down, and is now happening. Lewis, though, tries to bust out inside 20 seconds in the third. Al Albert along with the champ, Sean O'Grady. Budweiser presents USA's Tuesday night fights from Atlantic City inside the final 10 seconds of the third. And another good round for Qawi as he continues to grind it out. Dwight Qawi picking up big points in the last couple of rounds and wearing down young Joe Louis. And to start this round, it is Qawi who is actually holding and trying to frustrate young Joe Louis even more to start the fourth round.
Really connecting in that third round was Qawi. Louis was staggered. He was stunned. I don't know about you, Al, but really kind of makes me feel funny to say Joe Louis has been hit, he's been hurt, or he's been staggered. You know, thinking back on the Brown Bomber, difficult to do.
Well, we could just call him Eddie Taylor.
Yeah.
Do not recognize his name change. It's more as an insult to Joe Louis than anything else, like a 215 hitter calling himself a young Joe DiMaggio. Although this fighter, young Joe Louis, did start very well on his first 22 professional fights, landed a shot at the cruiserweight title, losing to Ozzy Ocasio. He had one more cruiserweight shot, but now it is all downhill for young Joe Louis. At the age of 34, this should tell him where he stands. Dwight Qawi now in control of this fight, fourth round. And for the first time, I think, in 4 rounds, Qawi is a step back. And that's only for assessment. Halfway through round number 4. It is scheduled for 10. Qawi at the age of 38 getting in the rounds. Won 10 rounds just 6 weeks ago.
And he's setting the pace here in this fight. He's been busy and active, although this round he's taking a step back and taking a break and trying to land the punches from a little bit wider stance, longer position. The blood's been pouring out of the nose of Louis since the second round. That's why.
50 seconds left in the fourth. And this has been a dissection by Dwight Qawi, starting early by going to the body, tying up Joe Louis at every opportunity, not allowing him to get started, and also taking his shots at the head of Louis.
Oh, this is experience. This is pretty to watch. The fighters like Qawi, I used to love to watch, to try to pick up some of the experience things that they have, like the over and the under. Like tying up at the time when your opponent's trying to punch, or fighting him off of you.
And Qawi says also what's important this second time around is the patience he now has. He knows it's 10 rounds. He doesn't have to run and jump and be careless and make early mistakes. That's the end of round 4. Corner of young Joe Louis. He is bleeding from the nose, also underneath the right eye, major swelling on his cheekbone. And Joe Louis decides not to continue. A puffiness, perhaps a fracture, taking the shots from Dwight Qawi, so this one does not go past the 4th round.
And, you know, the timing was right. I give Qawi every round. Qawi was landing at will. He stepped back in that 4th round and took a break, but this fight was just a matter of time.
So Dwight Qawi, 4 rounds, pounding it out inside. He had the perfect opponent for him, Joe Louis, young Joe Louis, who just stood in front of him and took the punishment, and there it is on his face. And very wise move by young Joe Louis to say no mas at this point. He was going nowhere and would have really gotten hurt.
I think he just got older in this fight, so now we can probably refer to him as old Joe Louis, or perhaps old Eddie Taylor.
Eddie Taylor, I think that's it. Dwight Qawi goes to 36-8-1, and he records his 21st KO and continues on the comeback championship trail. Let's get the official announcement here from our ring announcer, Ed Darien.
Ladies and gentlemen, on the advice of physician Dr. Dominic F. Coletta Jr., referee Steve Smoger stops this bout at the end of the 4th round, and the winner by a TKO the Camden Buzzsaw, Dwight Muhammad Qawi. Qawi. And how about